Hi, I'm Susan Kennard, and this is the Spiritual Awakener podcast. This is a podcast where I get to interview really lovely, beautiful souls that have come a long way on their journey. They didn't always know who they were. They knew deep within their soul who they were, but they didn't always know consciously who they were. But they had a spiritual awakening or a turning point that made them realize that they were so much more than this mind and this body, that they had a beautiful soul within, and that they had a special gift to share with the world. So I'm excited to share my gifts with you on this podcast and my next guest for her to share her gifts with you. Her name is Raphael. What a beautiful name already, because it holds an energy of spirit. So Raphael Van, welcome to the Spiritual Awakener podcast.
Thank you. It's great
You're
to be
very
here.
welcome. Yeah, it's great to have you. And obviously, you can hear my accent. I'm from the UK, and we live right down here on the coast, right by the sea. In fact, I can see the sea from my room now as I'm recording this with you. Tell everyone where you are in the world.
Yeah, so I'm in a very little place called Wanaka in New Zealand. So basically on the exact opposite side of the world to you.
And if we believed that the world was flat, how would that be? It would be
Well,
side to
you know,
side, right?
like, hi, babe. And I'd be like, hi,
Yeah,
Susan. Right, from
yeah,
across the map.
exactly. Yeah. And if we believe it's round like a globe, then it would be like high down under, right? So
Yeah.
I just thought that was quite funny to bring that in. So Raphael, tell us all about you. What do you call yourself and your work? What is your work? And then tell us one of your significant spiritual awakenings or turning points that led you to be who you are.
Cool. So I refer to myself as an awakening coach. So I help people through their awakening journey. So their spiritual awakening as well as their conscious awakening. I'm a qualified counselor as well and an international best-selling author. So I do lots of different things. And I use a lot of grounded counseling and therapy techniques with a lot of incredibly advanced spiritual work. So I vary from a lot of other coaches in that I'm teaching people, astral travel and multidimensional travel and how to work with guides and all sorts of stuff, like really high-end woo stuff that, you and I love.
We will.
Yeah, and then also grounding that with a lot of counseling theory, a lot of conscious communication, a lot of trauma release work, and it's all sort of grounded in that physical world, energetic and physical body connection. So that's kind of what I do.
And so that's right up my street, isn't it? So Raphael kind of emailed me and said that she loved the Spiritual Awakening podcast and felt that we were a really good match, and we really are. We really are, because she has that background in what I call the traditional, as I do in the sciences, and yet the channel to spirit and the understanding that we are this beautiful light being having a human experience, and that we're embodying this is just completely a match for us, isn't it, Raphael?
Yeah, totally.
So what do you feel was, that turning point? We have many of them, don't we? And when we look back on our life, we can sort of see that. But what do you feel? What happened for you to kind of realize that?
So for me, Susan, it's quite a clear point in my journey. So because before this point, I was your pretty standard kind of early 20-year-old. I was working in corporate. I'd gone to university and done marketing and international business. I love to go out and drink and party, and I was really wanting to travel, and I saved up a bunch of money and I went traveling, and I had a few months of this amazing.
Did you come
amazing
here?
time.
Did you come here to the UK?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So I went to Southeast Asia, and then I went over to Central Europe, and I was in Berlin and in Croatia and down
Yeah,
in
wow.
Spain, all sorts of stuff going
You don't
on.
happen to have Sagittarius rising, do you, in your chart?
No, I actually
Oh,
have almost no Sagittarius. I don't think any Sagittarius. Why is
oh wow,
that?
just because I'm Sag rising and I just have traveled all over the world as well, like you, and been to, as I said before we started recording, 3 times I've been to New Zealand.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, I think we are, these expansive beings that just want to put our sparkly feet wherever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think probably the Libra in me
Oh, I'm
encourages me
I'm
to,
Libra. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah. Are you
definitely a
Libra?
lot of,
So sun? Are you Libra sun? Are you?
I'm Libra Sun, I'm Libra Saturn, I'm also
Oh, I'm Libra
like,
sun. I've got a stellium in
yeah.
Libra. Yeah, so you
Ah,
you you too. Well, that's kind of how we match then. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Amazing.
What's your moon then?
My moon is Libra as well. So I've got Libra
Oh,
sun, Libra moon. Yeah, I've got all of that. So if you guys, sorry, if you're not into astrology, I'm an intuitive astrologer. And so I just like absolutely love astrology. And it sounds like Raphael loves astrology as well. And, when you look at that, you can see what's going on in the world scientifically, you can see a match with it. And well, right
mm,
now, as we're recording this on the 17th of November 21, we're actually coming up to a lunar eclipse in Taurus. And
mm.
so it's exciting times, really pivotal experience, isn't it? Anyway, go on, go on. We
Yeah.
could talk astrology
Um,
all the time,
yeah.
but
No, I love it. I really got into astrology actually from a lot of my clients. I wasn't super into astrology before I actually started doing coaching work. And then all of
yeah,
my clients were like, tell me about astrology, tell me, tell me, tell me. And I'd had
see.
my chart read and everything, but I was like, I need to actually learn a bit more because
Mhm.
all my clients are always asking me. And you're right, like the energy of what's going on with the moon cycles and with your different
Yeah.
houses and everything.
And
So powerful.
Chiron, do you look at Chiron as well? Because Chiron to me is the wounded well, is the wounded healer, but it's really about mission. So when you see where Chiron is in someone's chart, you can go, wow, like, yeah, it makes sense that you
Oh,
experience that, right? Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Definitely in my case.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, so I actually came to the UK traveling. So I was about 3.5 months deep, having an awesome
Wow.
time. And then I actually went up to Scotland and I went out
Yeah.
with some friends for a night partying. And when I was in a nightclub, I was drugged. And
Wow.
yeah, and it wasn't a roofie, it was some sort of psychedelic something or other.
What's a
There's no
roofie? What's a roofie?
Oh, so roofie is like a more commonly used drug to drug people
Oh,
where it makes
wow.
you pass out. So this was like a psychedelic sort of one of some sort. I'm not really sure what. And I'd never really done any drugs before, so I was like well over my
And how
head.
old were you? How old were you
I,
then?
I was at 23, I think. This
So
was
you
back
weren't
in
quite at your Saturn return, were you? You weren't
no,
quite.
no.
So my awakening was a 20 sort of seven-ish, and it was
Yeah.
almost Saturn return. Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was quite a number of years prior to a Saturn
Yeah.
return time. Um, and so I sort of, as all the drugs started to set in, I started seeing colors and seeing all these visuals and everything, and I was like, oh God, okay, and like managed to find my friends again and
Yeah.
had this crazy kind of night. Luckily, I was with some people that I really trusted and were really wonderful people who sort of took me home and looked after me and everything. And then I
You were
woke up
looked
the next
after. You were looked after, definitely for that. Mm,
Yeah, yeah,
mm.
yeah. In physical and in spirit. Although at
Yeah.
that
I,
time I
I meant
know,
spiritually. I was like, wow,
yeah,
you were really looked
yeah,
after. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And so basically, I woke up the next morning and I went for a walk to kind of clear my head, and all of the visuals and the colors and the images and the kind of shadows of things that I'd been seeing didn't go away, and they just
Wow.
never went away from that point. And in fact, they got stronger and stronger. And literally, I started to see spirits. I started to see people's auras. I started to have these
Mm.
really intense visuals and like premonitions, really intense dreams. And I had no idea what was going on. And I had no idea that this could happen to somebody. So I just thought
Wow.
I was crazy. Like I was just this
Yeah.
like,
So it
born
opened
away.
up. it must have opened up. I mean, obviously we've got our crown energy, but the sense I'm getting with this is it opened up something in the pineal, like it was like that light center. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, maybe I need to go and do that to open up, I'm like, no, 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 that is not the way now,
No.
not in this ascension pathway, not when we're doing this much higher vibrational work. That isn't the way. But in those times, that was like a rude awakening to her spiritual journey, which
Yeah.
probably would have come at 27, but it was kind of speeded up because of that experience. But the sense I'm
Yeah.
getting as I connect with my guides on this is the opening up of that pineal light, like almost like a calcification went, and then
Yeah.
that was a blast. But that's really
Yeah.
quite a tough way to awaken, right?
Yeah, totally. It was just like my
Yeah,
third eye, my crown
yeah,
both just off overnight.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's actually interesting because I do work with quite a lot of people now who come to me because they've had this intense experience as well,
yeah.
often with
Wow,
plant
you
medicine.
attract it.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
so I teach people around how that can actually be quite dangerous to do, like especially if you
Mm,
do it with the intention of kind of opening everything. I
mm.
mean, I didn't get a choice in it at all, in the sense that I didn't even choose to take the drugs. Like I was literally drugged by
Yeah,
somebody.
wow.
Um, but it just, it happened that way. And so I basically spent, the really short version of the story is I spent about the next 2 years trying
Mm.
to navigate that intense experience. And I had a lot of really
Two
scary,
years.
yeah,
Wow. Did you
yeah.
attract, I want to ask you, did you
Mm,
attract entity as well? Did you attract darkness? Did you, because this
yeah,
is what the sense I'm getting to ask you this question. Obviously, I'm always guided with where to go. But the sense I get with it is that it not only opened up the incredible visuals of how spirit really is, which is that bright colors that
mm,
aren't really like colors,
mm,
here. But also the dark side, which of course is always about our own fears, isn't it?
yeah,
Entity and attachment is always attracted to the vibration of fear.
yeah,
Yeah. So
totally.
so was that a big kind of clearing for you as well?
Yeah. So initially I had a huge amount of darker energies and darker spirits
Wow.
come away, particularly because I wasn't really looking after myself physically very well because I was traveling around a lot. I
Yeah.
energetic wasn't looking after myself like like a lot of healers, hugely empathic, always giving, massive holes in my aura, massive issues with not
Mm.
kind of grounding.
Yeah.
And so everything kind of opened up here. I just
Wow.
completely lost sense of my lower chakras and
Yeah.
just was not grounded at all. And so that
And you
kind of
didn't know that then as well. Like you're speaking as
no,
if like we know
yeah,
later, don't we? But at
yeah,
that
yeah,
time, you didn't know that you weren't
no,
grounded and embodied in this experience. You just
yeah,
felt all those things. So if you're
yeah,
listening to this and you're going through this, then it could be, I'm not talking necessarily about the drugs, but I'm talking about, like perhaps a big awakening or opening. It is really important to embody it, isn't it? And be human, as well
yeah.
as spirit. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And honestly, at the time, I thought that I was losing my mind. I
Yeah.
actually thought that I was going through psychosis and that I was going to end up in a hospital, like in, like
Bless you.
a mental health hospital of
Yeah.
some sort, or on drugs or something like that.
But that
And I,
happens. That happens, Raphael.
yeah,
Like I
oh,
always say, it's a fine line between mediumship and madness. Like, and there's
oh,
no judgment with what I say with that, but there is a fine line. And I think a lot of people that do go into mental health hospitals or sectioned, we call it sectioned over here in the UK, or end up on lots of suppressive medication are actually incredible mediums and channels, and
yeah.
just obviously have attracted the dark.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Attracted to the dark, I agree, and also become completely ungrounded in their
Yes.
physical
Mm.
bodies, become complete, like at times you can really lose sight of reality, which is
Yeah.
something I experienced, like not being sure what you're experiencing is in the 3D world and what you're experiencing is in the 4, 5, 6
You're higher
deep.
now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
What a
yeah,
journey. What a journey.
yeah.
So it took you about 2 years. And so what happened after the 2 years? What
Mm.
happened in the next stage of it?
Yeah, so basically when I came back to New Zealand, which was about 4 months after that experience, plus
Mm.
I had some other really intense traumatic personal experiences as well happen in that time. I came
Wow.
back and I was just literally like the shell of the person I had
Mm.
once been. I was just like a walking zombie, like in the midst of that dark night of the soul period, but not knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
And so very physically ill at that point as well. And so initially I sought support because of my physical illnesses.
Mm-hmm. Which happens a
Um,
lot. People come because
yeah,
of the physical. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And there was
Yeah.
no way at that point I did reach out and do a little bit of work with a medium psychic and a
Mm.
tiny bit of work with a counselor. But before then, I would never have gone to see a medium or psychic. I
Mm.
was barely even interested in counseling or therapy or
Yeah.
anything like
Yeah.
that. And so I really focused on my physical health initially, and I
Mm.
ended up with having surgery and all sorts of stuff went on in that space.
Yeah.
And really take a look at my life in terms of my stress levels,
Yeah.
my anxiety, and obviously into that came how much energy I was giving to people, what boundaries I was or wasn't
Mm-hmm.
setting. And so
Yeah.
that was a natural progression into doing more mental health work. And at that time as well, because my physical body started to improve and my physical health started to improve, the spiritual side of things got even more intense. And I
Wow.
just had like literally like visitations like every night. Like as I was going to bed, I'd have like spirits coming in. I'd have like spirits coming to my work. I would
Yeah.
have like the flashbacks of like past lives
Of
and
Also, did you
movals,
have
all sorts of
flashbacks
stuff.
of that time where you were on the psychedelic drugs? Did you ever have that as well?
Um, Actually, not so much. It's really
Mm.
interesting
Good.
because the actual drugging itself, like the experience to be drugged was very traumatic. And
Mm.
I'm not dismissing that because I
Yeah.
had to do a lot of work around the fact that I was drugged. But the
Yeah.
actual
That your
experience
power was taken
on
away in an indirect
absolutely,
way. Your power was taken away.
absolutely,
Somebody, some experience took your power away, but you had to
absolutely.
surrender to it, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
totally.
Yeah.
But the actual experience on the drugs
Mm.
wasn't particularly traumatic.
No.
Unlike, say, people who, like, I've worked with a lot of people who've had intense, plant medicine experiences, and it can be really the actual experience on
Mm.
the drugs can also be very traumatic. Whereas this was like quite a,
Mm.
lucid kind of,
I've done plant
all.
medicine, ayahuasca, a couple of times.
Mm,
I don't feel the need to do it again, but I did it a couple of times, and it was
yeah,
for me a really spiritual experience. And that's where I was
yeah.
given the title of my book, and I was given light language, and it was several years ago now, but that for me was the first one was a really quite intense experience of being shown all the things that you hadn't looked at. And then
Mm,
the second one was the most incredible spiritual experience. Because I already worked with my guides, and it was just literally like they were next to me. It was so beautiful. But it isn't like that for everybody. And I definitely get that. I could see many people in the trauma state of what they were experiencing.
mm,
Yeah. So
mm.
yeah, carry on.
Yeah, yeah. And I think just on what you said about, ayahuasca experiences, probably
Mm.
for you going in with, I imagine, a huge amount of intention and having done a lot of
Yeah.
work in
Huge.
the space, you're going
Mm.
into it where a lot of people do go into it with this empowered space.
Mm.
But if you're not, then that's when
Yeah.
things can end up a bit
Yeah.
rough, right?
That's why you
Um,
choose someone who, if you're choosing to do this, if you're listening to this, then, and if you're choosing to do plant medicine, then it's always important to choose beautiful, sacred people that you really, really trust, because it's not one of those things that you go and do at a festival. Yeah.
Mm.
So I'm just saying that to anyone who is
Yeah,
listening. You know, it's definitely not a party experience. It's a sacred experience, Raphael, isn't it?
yes,
Mm, yeah.
definitely, definitely. And the intention behind it is so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because it is super powerful. And the thing about it is that anyone who is destined to open up at some intense spiritual
Yeah.
gifts, highly
Yeah.
empathic, if you do plant medicine or any sort of psychedelics, or
Mhm.
sometimes even like high quantities of alcohol, and anything that makes you kind
Mhm.
of look and opens those channels, can then
Yeah.
set you up to kind of
Mm.
having those gifts kind of go like buff. But actually,
Yeah.
what you and I'm sure you'd speak to this as well, you and I as practitioners want is for people to be
Mm.
empowered in that and to step into it consciously, step by step,
Exactly.
rather than
Mm.
sort of
Yeah.
getting thrown off the edge of the cliff and kind of going like,
And
oh
I don't
God,
think we
now
need it.
like, yeah.
Personally, I don't think we need it now. I don't think we need something outside of us to activate this beautiful experience of this ascension that we're going through right now. But maybe in the past that would have been, helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so carry on. And then I really want you to say the title of your book, definitely, so people can perhaps look that up while they're listening to you.
Mm, yeah,
Mm,
cool. Yeah, so where was I? So, okay, so physical health journey, went through
mm,
all of that, had the classic situation of a whole lot of the Western medicine practices not working, turned to
mm,
Eastern medicine and turned to alternative medicine and had a lot more
yeah.
success with that. Went into the mental health space and coupled that with spiritual coaching. And the real turning point for me, and this is another kind of turning point, but a real positive one, was
Yeah.
that I started a spiritual coach who, when I said to them, like, so I'm seeing dead people, and they're like, cool, tell me about that. Okay, get empowered in this. And I was like, what? Let's get me empowered in this. Like really? And
Yeah.
sort of teach me how to like set boundaries with spirits, and recognizing that actually spirit,
Yeah.
what I refer to as spirit ushering, which is,
Yeah.
connecting with spirits and also helping them to pass over and working with them.
Yeah.
Is is actually like a very common thing, and something that there used to always be in communities people
Yeah.
who would have the ability to do, because it's an important part of the wider circle of life
Yeah.
energetically. But
I love
now,
that what you've just
yeah,
said, because actually
yeah,
it became kind of like people didn't talk about, and definitely when I was opening up and becoming a medium all those years ago, you just
mm,
didn't talk about it. Yeah. Whereas now
yeah,
we can really talk about it again. And with all
yeah,
these beautiful souls that are, we might call unexpectedly passing over through,
mm,
whatever's going on in the world, however people view that. There are a lot of souls that don't realize that they have actually passed. And so I definitely hear what you're saying, Raphael, because when I teach my classes as well, one of the things we do is we help all those souls to pass over to the light,
yeah,
and they can come back and chat to us afterwards, but to get them to pass over. And I love it that you've touched on what it used to be like, and it was part of that extended family,
yeah,
tribe in a way, soul family, that people used to do that. Mm,
definitely. And back when we lived in communities, and particularly in basically every indigenous culture in the world, there is a place for the medium or the spiritual guide, the shadow walker,
mm,
whatever they were called.
yeah.
That person had a role in helping spirits to pass over. And here in New Zealand, in Maori culture, which is our ethnic culture here, that's a huge part of the culture as well. um,
Yeah.
and it's something that in a lot of in sort of Western culture for a long time,
Yeah.
particularly with capitalism and everything, all of that's got squished. But now
Yeah.
people are sort of becoming a little bit more open to sharing, because I think that there's been plenty of people who've been able to see and connect with spirits
Hmm.
this whole time. It's not like it's just stopped and then it's all opening up again
Yeah.
now. I think it's been something that people have been able to do, but they've suppressed their gifts and they've also
Yeah.
hidden, because it's not been safe, right? Like people have
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
killed for these gifts.
Exactly. And that's coming up massively, I think, in our Akashics right now. All of those times that maybe as a witch, or I should have worn my top actually. I have a really good top that's about we're the granddaughters of the witches they could not burn or something. Anyway, it's really cool. But it's a lot of those lifetimes that, you know, are coming up to be healed, would you say, at the moment, the karmic aspects. And definitely with that last transit, the Scorpio transit, you know, a couple of weeks ago, that was massive. That was, you know, that was a really big karmic time, you know, where people were really clearing out a lot. And you saw a lot of people being unwell, and you saw a lot of people, you know, emotionally struggling. And that was where I think we had a big karmic purge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you look at it collectively, absolutely. And then when you also start to look at within each individual journey, right? You've got that point in your awakening where you start to work through and you clear and you heal the past lives that you maybe haven't. And like for me, I'd done a lot of work and healing on past lives where I'd been killed or banished for this work, surprisingly, actually, because I had a very spiritually connected life only maybe 4 or 5 lifetimes ago. So I'd done a lot of that
You've
work.
done a lot of that, yeah.
But what I hadn't done a lot of work on was working around using my channeling ability and using my like empathic ability to manage emotionally situations.
But
So
that's
like
the
my
human
last
part, right? So that's the human
yeah
part, being able
yeah
to being able to align to that embodying of being human, experiencing emotion, but not actually giving your power away and your energy away, right, to others.
yeah
You
yeah
can you
yeah
can you can keep that power, or empowerment rather than power, but also be able to experience what's going on. Yeah, amazing.
yeah yeah
Yeah,
and yeah, so anyway, so all of that became part of my journey, and
yeah.
it sort of led me in so a lot of it did start off dark, if I'm really honest.
Hmm.
And over time, as I was able to ground back into my body, as I was able to set boundaries, particularly with spirits and with energy, and able to do a lot of clearing work, I was able to get a lot more of that lighter energy through and experience some beautiful situations with helping, you know, these, like, for example, I had this beautiful experience with helping this very young girl spirit pass over, and I've had this awesome water sprite that came and lived with me in my park, lived in our bathtub for a few months, and
Oh wow.
like beautiful things. And I met a lot of my soul family along the way and did some clearing of some stuff with some of those people. And so that was over the course of that was then again, so the first sort of 2 years was largely just like managing stuff and just getting my feet on the ground again. And then the next 2 years or so was really stepping into that work, and I started to do a lot of spirit ushering work. And I was actually super resistant, Susan, to go into human work. I was like, I don't work with humans. I work with
I just work with spirit.
I work with I'll work with spirits to help them pass over. I'll work with like guides. I'll do land energy work. I'll clear spaces, but I don't want to work with humans. And so for about a year, my guides were like, "You need to work with humans. You need to work with humans." And I was like, "Nope, I don't want to do it. I didn't want this life. I didn't want this lifestyle. I wanted, like, I'm doing really well on the corporate ladder. Thank you very much. I'm actually pretty happy in that world."
I definitely resisted it as well. And you know, I was a psychologist and psychotherapist and worked in child protection. And if I hadn't had the awakening and the direction, I never would have done it. Right? It's like definitely was not what I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
but if you're meant to, right, and it's in the cards, literally,
Yeah.
then it you know, you're meant to be doing it. So Raphael, can you
Yeah.
just say the title of your book and your website?
Yeah, totally. So my book is called Your Conscious Awakening, and it's a combination of the transformation that you get from doing conscious work coupled with intuitive work as well. So I think of it as not just a book, it's a self-healing manual. So I
Amazing.
share within foundational techniques, which most of them are grounded in counseling and therapy work, but they're connection work to help people develop that initial level of intuition, but also to become more conscious of their patterns. So things like connecting into your aura, grounding, setting energetic boundaries, reframing in your mindset, all sorts of stuff like that. In a child's work, there's like kind of 11 foundations, as well as I've got a chapter. I've only got one chapter on my journey because I didn't want the whole book to be about my
same, but I think that's good. I think that's good. We have one chapter on who we are and where we, you know, what's your name and where'd you come from and how do you get where you are. But then the rest of it is that, you know, self-healing of helping people. Because what is it about, Raphael? It's about one person. We said we set our intentions at the start, but it's one person that reads that book, right? And if that one person reads that book, then they maybe give it to someone else to read. And, you know, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? Like we're planting the seeds. So what's your website? So people can...
So it's empoweredwithraphael.com. So all of my Instagram and all of my everything is just Empowered with Raphael. You can just Google that. Sometimes if you just Google Empower with, and then, so my name is spelled the same as the Archangel, pronounced slightly differently. And yes, I was given this name at birth. I didn't choose the name.
That's amazing, isn't it? That you got that. Like you chose that, right? You know, I always believe we choose our parents and we choose our energetic name. What's the chances of you choosing a name like that? Yeah, that is just, you know, incredible. So beautiful. Yeah,
definitely.
So we can find you on your name. So basically, so it's say it again, just so people can find you.
Empowered with Raphael, think Archangel, and I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and my website. I feel like that's enough social media for me. And if anyone's interested, check out my book through my website. You can, if you go directly through the website on the online shop, you can actually get it for a 50% discount as an ebook. And I've got physical copies available in New Zealand and then ebook form internationally. And the audiobook is coming out in a couple of weeks as well. I'm just
amazing. I think audiobooks are definitely a way forward because, you know, we're always like busy and listening to stuff, you know, in the car or whatever. I love, mine's definitely going to be audiobook as well. So Raphael, what I want to say to you is that the because we're kind of getting almost towards the end of our conversation, and I want you know, I feel like Raphael is an archangel, but I feel like you have the energy of ascended master. So what types of people come to you? So people listening to this, you know, who comes to you? Who comes to you to work with you? Just give us an idea of who might come to you.
Good question. So I work with people, and the people who come to me are empaths, typically have experienced some level of connection as a child. Often people talk about, you know, seeing spirits or having imaginary friends and stuff when they were a kid, shutting it down. And then they've either had an experience like I did where things have started to open up without their control and they're wanting to learn how to control that. So with that type of person, for anyone who's listening, the main things is things around grounding, around boundary setting, around connecting to your body, around how do you manage your energy. And so I do a lot of work with people in that sense.
That's great. And much needed.
So I call it spiritual health and safety.
I love that. Spiritual health and safety.
So that's one, that's kind of one sort of avenue where people feel really called to work with me. The other is where people have had those experiences as a kid, they're an empath, they've tried a few things intuitively, and they're really wanting to take their intuitive work to the next level. So they've, you know, you might have been to healers, you might have learned how to do some card readings, but you're like, no, you know what, I want to actually be really clear on how how I can work with my guides. I want to connect to other people's guides. I want to do all of that advanced intuitive work, but in a
Amazing.
really safe way.
Yeah.
And so I talk about it as I'm reminding people of how
That's
to
what
do
I
it.
say. That's exactly what I say. It's
Yeah.
like you know it
Oh,
already, but you're just remembering who you are and what your gifts are and your mission, really, you know.
yeah. Yeah. I love
So
that.
it's
So
so
yeah.
it is remembering, isn't it? Like we come in and we like forget, and then we spend the whole of our life trying to remember,
Yeah.
and this is the time to remember, right? So
Exactly.
so I just kind of want to say, you know, this is amazing. So if you're listening to this and you've been thinking, actually, oh my goodness, I just don't feel safe. Like if I think about spirit, you know, my daughter is only 14, she's 14 next week, and she refuses. You know, she's totally connected, totally sees spirit and has done from a baby in a cot, right?
Mm,
And because I could see her looking at the guides. And she and I made a deal, and we just said, she said, I do not want to see them, mum. I don't want them around me. And I said, you know what? That's absolutely fine, because one day you'll be ready. And when that day comes, you can invite them back in. Because obviously I teach this as well. So I was able to say to her, you've got the power to actually ask them to step away. She said, I only want them to come when you're around. So I said, that's fine, then we'll do that deal. And since that day, she's never been woken up in the night again. And I just want to say to people, you know, if you've got children, you absolutely can do this with your children. You can make that decision, maybe see Raphael and she'll help you with that as well, or come to me and I help you with it. But definitely you can help your children, but you can also help yourself, because you are the one, like you chose to come, you chose to have these guides, you chose to be on your mission in this time, this incredible time of awakening and ascension. And so you have the power to ask your guides to step out. You have the power to ask your spirits to step out. It's just that you
yeah.
forget that, and
Mm,
ask and it is given. Because if you ask, it is always given. But of course, you know you have to like do the healing work on yourself. You have to be empowered. And if you're an empath, you feel everything. Yeah.
yeah.
And that I find is our inner work, right? So that
Yeah.
empathic part is our inner work. And then when we feel really embodied, like you were talking about early, really grounded in our lower energies, our earth star, grounded to Mother Earth and Gaia, that is where the true magic happens, would you say, in people's
Yeah.
lives? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I talk about it as you're a tree, right? So the more that you root yourself down, the taller that you can grow and the higher you can
I love that.
expand. And a
Yeah.
lot of people think that it has to be one or the other, but
Mhm.
actually it can be both. And that's what the beautiful thing in this world, right, is that when you become awakened, you realize that there isn't an either either. There isn't a yes or no. There's always a both. There's always a
I love
somewhere
that.
in the middle that you can find that balance in.
Raphael, that is such a beautiful thing, and a visual for people to look at is like, you know, as we wrap this up, that visual of imagining ourselves as this incredible tree that actually is connected to Mother Earth, connected to the universe or God, source energy, whatever people feels sits with them. And those two combined, as Raphael says, actually creates this human experience. And we can't just be connected to the universe, because else there's no point of being here. And we can't
Mm.
just be in the earth, because it is our soul's connection, the guides are saying, that travels us through on the mission that we chose.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. What an incredible conversation. I mean, I could speak to you for hours, but I feel that empowered with Raphael.com, you need to go over and have a look at that, and you know, maybe reach out to Raphael, and could they do, you know, would it be okay for you to offer them just a chat, maybe a 10-minute or a 15-minute chat, if they are not sure what they need? Is that okay for you to offer them
Absolutely.
that? Yeah.
Yes.
They mention
You
the
can go.
podcast, if they mention coming on the podcast, sorry, listening to the podcast and you being interviewed on it, then they can have that 15-minute free chat with you, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can reach out to me on social media, or on email, and just message me, or if you can find it, if you're meant to, your guides will direct you on the website to where I do have connection calls that you can book. I'm not gonna advise
Yeah.
exactly there, because I just trust that people who are meant to find it will
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah.
But
Amazing.
absolutely, please reach out. And I've got a few free resources on my website as well, of different things to do with like intuitive self-care and inner child healing work as well. So there's lots of different things on there that people can connect to
Explore with you and feel, you know, and like feel
yeah,
your energy and work, yeah, on that
yeah,
level. Yeah, it's great to
yeah,
have that free resource, and people can then make a decision, can't they? Okay,
yeah.
Raphael, thank you so much for being on the Spiritual Awakener. It's been a joy. Just hold on there for a minute while I just close this podcast. So thank you so much for listening. I've really, really enjoyed this episode. If you have a spiritual awakening experience or story that you wish to share with my listeners and my audience, I would love to hear it. Please reach me on susankennard.co.uk or susan@susankennard.co.uk. And of course, you can find me across all social media and other podcast platforms. Much love for now. Remember, you are loved and you are this incredible being of light, just choosing right now to have a human experience. Much love. Bye for now.